Make sure you check out our online store where we work with our graphic designer to create stunning garment and product designs that feature a wide variety of aircraft types such as British fighters, World War II aircraft, American bombers, Russian fighters and much more. You can pick your favourite designs and personalise any items within our Redbubble store that range from clothing right the way through to stationery. All of our designs feature our logo so you can show your support for the channel while getting a quality product. You can head to our website aircrewinterview.tv and click store, or go to redbubble.com/people/AC interview. Thank you and enjoy.
I would argue that the Tomcat wasn't necessarily designed to be a dog fighter. I mean, it was designed to be an interceptor, and that mission was to get airborne and get as fast as it can. And it was a very, very fast airplane. I was able to, on one mission, we were able to go 2.2 Mach. And, we didn't go above 2 very often. But in this case, it was a post-maintenance check flight where you have to run the aircraft through a certain set of conditions to make sure it's good to go. And it was the very first F-14D that incurred any kind of damage. Most of us, we were at the squadron that got the very first F-14Ds. It was the training squadron, because you start there and then it goes to the fleet. Well, we started getting all these brand new aircraft from Grumman, and they smell brand new. They look and feel so clean and everything. And I remember thinking, everybody's kind of like, man, we're a little bit worried about who's going to scratch the first one, or who's going to crash the first one, because they're so expensive. And sure enough, it was a good year later, and one of my buddies took off and for some reason had a late abort, but he had already raised the landing gear. And he thought he was still on deck, so he kind of raised it and lowered it, but it came up just enough to where the nose gear was starting to come up. So bottom line is, this thing, the aircraft didn't get airborne, but it's going down the runway with the kind of collapsed gear, and it just chews the nose. And the F-14 had the chin pod, yes. and the F-14D had a dual chin pod. It had a TCS television camera on one side, and about the same diameter was the IRST, the infrared. And that was a really expensive sensor, both there. And that chin pod was just chewed off. So, the plane obviously flew again. Well, I was on the flight schedule that, 2 weeks later when it was ready to go flying, but they had not repaired the chin pod yet. They had to basically take what was remaining of it off. So now this thing looked like an old Tomcat from the 70s, when they were super. And that chin pod actually creates quite a bit of drag for the aircraft. And so we were airborne doing the post-maintenance check flight, and there's a part where we do a high-speed dash just to make sure it can go. And usually go, 1.2, 1.3 or whatever. But on this particular day, we had no chin pod, and you could just tell that the plane wanted to go faster, because it had no chin pod. And so we just kept it in the burner, and next, we're at 2.2, 2.2. And then you're starting to run out of, space, because you can't go into, south of Mexico. And so we basically turned around, but we ended up going, like I said, 2.2 in that airplane. And it probably would have gone faster, At some point, you get a little worried, because, if something goes wrong, you're probably not going to survive. You definitely won't survive projection. But back to your original question, as far as the dog, or a DACT. I always found that if you could magically have the exact same pilot with the same skills in a Tomcat versus an F-15, and they each flew their aircraft to its properly, because every aircraft has its advantage in a certain area, I think you would find that Tomcat probably wouldn't have won that many ACM engagements, because it wasn't designed as a dogfighter per se. It turned out to be a fairly good dogfighter, especially in the hands of somebody who knew what they were doing. But
yes.
it was limited to 6.5 Gs. Well, how do you compete with an F-16 that can pull 9? So whoever pulls more Gs is going to have a tighter circle, and when you have a tight circle, you're going to be able to get back there. So I wouldn't say we always lost against our F-15s or F-18s, but it was not quite as good a dogfighter, because it just wasn't designed for that. So we always. Not that we didn't enjoy, especially in similar aircraft, 1v1s. It's always, because that is truly now a test of aircrew versus aircrew, not aircraft. But it's a fine dogfighter, but in reality it would be very difficult to compete with an F-15 that could pull more Gs, an F-16 that could definitely pull almost 50% more Gs. They had ACM weaponry that ours was again designed and that never really changed. You have these ACM modes now, and today we've got the joint helmet technology where now you just basically move your head and you could designate and point, and that changes so much, because now your aircraft doesn't necessarily need to be able to maneuver fast, because in the old days you had to get your nose on your enemy to be able to shoot them, or at least close, right? Nowadays you could just use your head point and designate. It creates a lot of other interesting predicaments, but it was the other disadvantage of the Tomcat in terms of dogfighting was it was the easiest one to be seen, because it was such a big aircraft. You could see Tomcats 12, 14 miles away. Now, they're going to be little dots, but you could see them that far. Whereas an F5 or an A4, you won't see those until you're 4 miles. I mean, yeah. So everybody likes to say, the Tomcat was the Top Gun aircraft, blah blah. It was the primary go-to jet fighter, just because it was our only fighter in the early 70s or into the 80s until the Hornet came along. But the bottom line is it was designed as an interceptor, and it did a fantastic job as an interceptor, and it did a fine job as an ACM machine. But in reality, again, how many tight combat in the history in the last 30 years, how many of those have we seen? Not a lot. So you can argue, it's fun to train, and you should always train for guns only and all that stuff. But in reality, it's not that practical. And when I was on the Top Gun staff, they used to say of the current aircraft that in a fight at range you want to be in an F-15 pre-merge. When you're at the merge, you want to be in the F-18 because it was probably the best of the maneuvering. And then when it's time to leave and run, you want to be in the Tomcat because that was the fastest one and you can get away. And that was that's a great way to engage, was to know when not to fight, and you can outrun most of your enemy. And so a lot of ours would be slashing attacks, where you come in forward, try to kill as many as you can. And if a guy doesn't see you, by all means, you roll in and try to take him out. But if it becomes this, skirmish, if you can leave rather than, get shot, that's probably better to do that.